Should Jalen McMillan consider coming back for 2024?
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. We write with Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. You can check out all our written work over there at si.com/college/Washington. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Now, Lars, we have just returned from Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, and Chuck Morrell today, their press conference to open the week. As you know, we get ready for Washington's game against Utah this weekend, which thank just everything that it's a 12:30 kickoff. We're very thankful for that. That's not a 7:30. Truly, that was fantastic. But one of the things that we got to talk to both Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer about was Jalen McMillan and his future. And Ryan Grubb said, first Kalen DeBoer said he is officially questionable for this game against Utah. And one of the things that Ryan Grubb said is that he's going to be looked at by the Seahawks doctors tomorrow for a second opinion on just kind of what the plan of action should be. And both coaches seem to keep stressing the fact that, hey, we think he's really close. Like, we wouldn't have brought him back if we didn't think that he was ready to come back. And obviously we know what happened. And he's played in 2 full games this year before injuring himself against Michigan State. And then we've kind of barely seen him since. And so the question is, should he return in 2024?
Yes, in one part of that, because I think first of all, let's paint the picture that Jalen McMillan could have gone to the NFL after last season. So could Roma Jones. They would not have been first round picks. Rome maybe was a borderline first rounder, but he's certainly cemented himself as a first rounder this season because he has played every single game, looked fantastic, done everything he needed to, got bigger, everything like that. Jalen McMillan probably would have been 3rd, 4th round last season. And that's not a slight to him, right? But just the combination of he hadn't played a full season prior, or he did, but it wasn't great because it was John Donovan. First year in Kalen DeBoer's system, maybe it's good to get a second year. The problem now is Jalen McMillan has missed Arizona, basically Oregon.
He's missed a good majority of time. Yeah, if you really want to, because with the amount he played against both Oregon and Stanford, you can say he's played 3 games this season. Because he wouldn't have played much in the second half against Michigan State anyways, with the way that game was going. Right,
exactly. And so I think for that reason, when you want to go to the NFL, you want your last season to be either a full season, like Braylon Trace, for example, has played every game this season. He doesn't have necessarily the sacks that maybe we both thought or that anybody would have thought that he would have, but he has made an impact and played every single game. So that is not a deterrent, right? He doesn't need to come back to get better stats. But Jalen not playing more than 4 or 5 games, that to me, why, if you have the opportunity to come back, why would you not take that extra year, that full season, be the main guy next season, whether or not Jalen Polk goes? Because if not, you have him and Jalen Polk coming back with Jeremy Bernard, likely probably a transfer portal receiver. Maybe
Denzel Boston's Till, too, who played the most snaps of his career against USC.
Right, exactly. And so there's enough weapons coming back, but then you also have the Giles Jackson conundrum, where if Giles plays more than 5 games this season, he can't come back. So if there's I don't think the coaching staff, and I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I don't think they want both of them back. But the longer McMillan's injury continues to linger and Giles is now healthy, I could see a case to where let's just play Giles. Maybe don't shut Jalen down officially, but I don't see a reason why he wouldn't come back, because I think given one more full year, help whoever the quarterback is next year, he's going to know the system. He's going to be one of the top receivers coming back next year. And he maybe plays himself into a 2nd round consideration next year. So I think, because otherwise, if he goes pro this year, yeah, he'll get drafted, but we're still talking 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Whereas next year he could play him into a day one, not a day 1 pick, but potentially a day 1 pick.
Like at the very least, like a mid day 2 selection. So
exactly.
I'm glad you brought up draft stock, because that was something that I had a conversation with a scout that I talked to over the summer, where one of the things they told me was, yeah, Jalen McMillan still has some things that he needs to work on. And is it possible that some of those things that we talked about have improved? One of them is just kind of fluidity in route running. Did he look like he was a little bit more of a fluid route runner early this season? Yeah, sure. But has he gotten a full season to show that? No. And he has good straight line speed. We know this. And he could go to the NFL this season and kind of the comp that I think fits him really well right now is he might look like Jalen Hyatt for the New York Giants, where coming out of Tennessee, Jalen Hyatt ran really well and he does some things really, really well, but they don't necessarily have him run a full route tree and kind of be a big part of that offense. There are a whole lot of other issues that we don't need to get into on this podcast with the New York Giants that I would love to talk about. But one thing that, another year of Jalen McMillan in college can do is he can assert himself as a bona fide, I don't know if he could be a number one at the NFL level, but at the very least a number two, like a complimentary option that maybe, hey, you throw him in the slot and he can just make a whole bunch of plays, kind of like he does right now at times, right? Where you can do something like that with him. He will complement the other receivers that you have in a room really well. And he can just be that extra piece where it's something you and I have talked about a lot on the show, off the air, where him, Jalen Polk, and Rome Odunze make a fantastic trio. You take one of them out, it's still really, really good, right? But it's having that trinity that makes everybody in the room so much better. Just the way that they're all able to complement one another's skills. And I think that's one of the things that another year of Jalen at the college level can do. And then another thing, while, obviously we want to focus on this season, right? Because there are such lofty goals that can be achieved this year. This team is 9-0. This team is number 5 in the AP poll and in the college football playoff rankings before, we hear them as you're listening to this. It'll be on later tonight. But that's something where, of course, we want to focus on that. But in the back of the coach's minds might be, well, hey, we're not going to be able to run this back because Rome Odunze is probably gone. Michael Penix is definitely gone. We'll see about Troy Fautanu, Braylon Trice. A lot of the big contributors on this team are going to be in the NFL next season. So it's not necessarily a run it back, but it's more of like a bridge year where it's okay. We can still be really good. You can still rack up 8, 9, 10 wins, right? And in your first year in the Big Ten, just say, hey, yeah, we're going to be a really competitive team, even though we have so many new starters on this roster. And Jalen McMillan can kind of be one of those pieces to just kind of bridge that gap and get Washington to where it wants to be and just kind of establish itself as a future Big Ten power.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the other thing to consider, I think I mentioned this before on the show where it was, I don't know if it was in fall camp or shortly after the season began, but it was certainly before the Michigan State game. Jalen McMillan was kind of asked offhand, well, you could, and this was in August because this was after the Big Ten move. He was asked basically, well, hey, you could play in the Big Ten next year. Like, oh, you could come back for another. He's like, oh yeah, 100% for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, in a typical J-Mac, like committal but not a committal way. But it did kind of open the eyes to where it's like, wait a minute, he can come back. There's no reason. Right. Now, again, Rome, as we've said, probably gone. There's no business for Rome to come back. But Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan both have the argument to be made. You could use one more year. Obviously, Polk is a sophomore by eligibility, but not actually because
we're not gonna,
4 years. Like, I'm not. But the point is, okay,
it's terrible.
But I will say to the people that ask, does this program have staying power? If you return both Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan next season with a Jeremy Bernard, with a Denzel Boston, and maybe add one more in the transfer portal, that's a really solid group. And now if Polk and Rome go, I think that even increases the chance more for McMillan to come back because Polk has gotten the reps and delivered where J-Mac would have, I think, in my opinion. Because if you look, Rome and Polk are almost the only 200-yard receivers in the conference. So on the same team. So Polk is certainly, I remember the conversations you and I had where I said, do not sleep on Jalen Polk over the summer. And, we've seen that come to fruition this season. I'm not going to bury you. I'm just going to leave it there. But
hey,
I think
I appreciate it.
But I will say Jalen Polk has certainly played himself into it. He's certainly an NFL caliber receiver. Absolutely. First rounder, probably not. But again, that second, third, fourth round, right? I think that's the other thing for both of them to consider, where there's so many receivers in this class. Yes, and that's where NIL comes into play too, because these guys can come back and make the same amount of money that they would being a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick when you can elevate yourself the next season to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. So I think there's certainly financial implications all around too as well.
I agree with you there. And we are going to move on here because we're going to talk about some pretty exciting comments made about a couple of true freshmen in the press conference today. But first, we're going to give a shout out to our friends over at FanDuel, because you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Lars, the line for this UW-Utah game is at 9.5 right now, correct?
Correct. It went down a point, and the over/under also went down a point to 54.5.
Okay. What do you think? Where are you putting your money?
It's you. I mean, again, that's what I love about, if I say Utah plus 9.5, but Washington still wins the game. There you go. I mean, like, I think that's kind of how it goes. And I have a hard time seeing a Kyle Whittingham team. I mean, yes, they got shellacked against Oregon, but I think that was, just an interesting circumstance. A lot of things happened in that game. I don't think Utah wins this game, but they're not going to make it easy. That's certainly the case.
I agree with you there. We'll see what happens, but it's such a tough team. And one of the really fun comments that we saw from Kyle Whittingham's press conference today, because we absolutely will throw shade at our buddy Spencer McLaughlin and just the Oregon Ducks in general. Not so much at Spencer. We love Spencer, but Kyle Whittingham said that UW's offensive line is going to be the best that he's faced this season. So we're just going to throw that out there into the ether, and I want to parlay that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I think it was Grubb made the comment that this is the most physical defense that they'll play, or was it DeBoer? One of the two said that, where it's like, this is the most physical defense. And so it's the same kind of tongue-in-cheek comment there, which I absolutely love, because we need
absolutely. So I want to parlay my just the freshman comments here, because we're going to mainly talk about true freshmen. But first, redshirt freshman Parker Brailsford has just been fantastic. He was named the Pac-12's Offensive Lineman of the Week. He is just an outstanding football player. We love just watching that guy play every week. But we're going to spend the majority of this time talking about some true freshmen who made an impact this year. We've talked about Landon Hatchett a lot on the show. And he's somebody who he did come in for one play against USC when Troy Fautano's helmet came off. So that's we're kind of, was that his 5th game, Lars? Is his red shirt officially gone, if it wasn't already?
I think that's what blew my mind about that play, was because it's such a small play in the grand scheme of things. Why do you not put Jalen Clem out there? Just one play, throw that man out there. Play without a left tackle, see what happens. Honestly, I mean, like, because but I think I'm half kidding when I say that. But to your point, I'm going through the PFF snap counts right now, and we're looking for Landon Hatchett. I see a Garen Hatchett. I'm trying to find where's Landon,
because Landon was absolutely out there for at least one play, and he's somebody who the coaching staff has been really impressed by just this entire season. And it was nice to see him in there. And because it's something that I remember you and I were talking to Ryan Grubb in the preseason, when he just kind of threw Landon Hatchett's name in there, kind of like just at the end, just like, yeah, here you go. This is also something that happened. It's like, yeah, one of the guys I really trust is Landon Hatchett's. Oh, that's interesting. Not knocking Landon when we say that, but it's just really, you trust this true freshman in this rotation. Okay, that's really interesting. Now you need to expand on that. And I think Landon has, for the most part, like, he struggled a little bit in the Arizona State game, but then again, so did the entire offensive line. So you can't really necessarily just run any one person down for that too much. But we've been really impressed with him this year.
Yeah, we have. And to answer your question, yes, his red shirt is burned. Congratulations to Landon Hatchett on that. And but I think, in a way, it's almost like, I think he would have probably played at least 1 or 2 more games this season, and potentially, depending on how the bowl game goes, who you play. Again, if you get in the playoffs, I'd be surprised if he played, but maybe if, you're blowing out Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, let's just have fun with it. I could see Landon Hatchett getting some second half snaps. Maybe not a ton, but enough to say, hey, you know what? We got a 14-point. I mean, that is the one thing we do want to point out about this coaching staff. They have zero problem playing players that are younger. So if you're not playing and you're a true freshman, because just a quick segue on this, Leroy Bryant has played a couple of games this season, but the cornerbacks have not really factored in at all. And Chuck Morrell said as much today, where it's like, yeah, they're coming along, but given who we're playing, given the moment that we're facing each week, it's not advantageous at all to put those three out there. And I don't think,
right,
barring the injury that they had last season, where basically everyone and their mother was hurt at some point in the secondary, and especially a cornerback, then maybe you play an emergency situation. But I don't. That's why the cornerbacks haven't played. But again, Scott Huff as an offensive line coach, he's going to play guys. I mean, Zach Henning is another one. I remember asking Scott Huff about Henning last week or the week before, and he's like, yeah, no, Zach's he enrolled early, and Landon was another early enrollee in the back half of spring. So I think getting those guys in the system early has kind of helped them get a better understanding of the system earlier in camp. And then obviously Landon just is a unit, like just an absolute weapon. I am waiting for him. This is my bold prediction offhand. At some point this season, I hope, if not next season, Landon Hatchett will line up as an extra offensive lineman and be eligible.
Ooh, I like that bold prediction. That's a fun one. You're gonna have to clip that and just kind of put it in the bank for whenever that does happen. But one of the other guys that we saw, and I feel like we might have pointed this out on our live show, is Tybo Rogers, where Dylan Johnson obviously had a fantastic game, and I asked Ryan Grubb today, I said, yeah, you went to Tybo Rogers in that spot, and he said, yeah, like he's just what he's because obviously Tybo was suspended for we don't really have all the details there, but he was suspended for something in the preseason. And Ryan Grubb had a whole lot of to say, like, yeah, he hurt his team by doing this. And, we're really disappointed because we want him to be out there. We need him to be out there. And now we're kind of seeing why that was so impactful, because Tybo's a really impressive player, man. He really is. And we saw just because one of the first things that Ryan Grubb said was there was no question about his physical talent and ability. And he said, we trust him in pass blocking. And you saw him with the one little swing pass that he caught, made a couple guys miss, and then ran somebody over the end of the play. It's okay. Yeah. No, this dude can play. This dude has it.
Yeah. And Lee Mark said the exact same thing. I remember asking him, I believe I think it might have been going into the Oregon week. I'm not totally sure, but I remember asking him about Tybo and just kind of where his status was at, again, because he had played, I think 5 games at that point, or 4 or 5 games at that point. He's now at 7, so his red shirt's beyond burned. But the one thing that Lee Mark said is he wasn't a guy that went out on the recruiting circuit. He wasn't a guy that was a big, I'm going to take a bunch of visits kind of thing. But Lee Mark said, had he done that, he would have been, one of the better running backs in the class that he came in. So I think it's a matter of the staff knows, and this gets back to the staff development, right? That's the talent evaluation that the staff has, where we've seen it, where obviously Landon's kind of a gamey, but Tybo is a guy where nobody would have expected him in the beginning of fall camp to be a significant factor this season, not necessarily because of the suspension and all that, but you had Will Nixon, Daniel Ngata, Sam Adams, Richard Newton, even, who hasn't factored in. But again, there's so many other bodies there. You think, why do we have to put this running back in? But you saw it on the swing pass, to your point. I mean, that's an easy one where maybe that's a 4-yard completion that he turned into 14 or 15 on that play, if I'm not mistaken. But he made that cut. Again, you can say how trash USC's defense is all you want. You still got to make that cut and still got to make that play. And so I think
miss my guy, Alex Grinch. I miss him.
Yeah, you know what? Absolute legend. You see the no context college football tweet where he said, we will miss you, King. And people are like, who's we? It's like, are you kidding? Everybody in the Pac-12 not on USC's sideline is going to miss that guy, because
I slapped a retweet on that as fast as I possibly could.
Alex Grinch is the defense, but John Donovan is the offense.
Oh, so speaking of defense, for the segue before we just get on our Alex Grinch tangent again, which we want to. Chuck Morrell had a very interesting comment about freshman edge rusher Jacob Lane. And I feel like we buried the lead on this, because this was definitely like the biggest comment that was made, I think, in terms of the young guys that were talked about today. And Chuck Morrell said, yeah, he's got a chance to be the next dynamic edge rusher at UW. And we love our guys, Lance Holtzclaw, Maurice Himes. We think that they're super talented. We love watching Zach Durfee. We think that once he's able to get on the field, that he's also going to be a really talented player for this defense. But that was really interesting, because now Jacob Lane has played in 4 games. And the other thing that I think we want to say on this note is the last time this comment was made about a particular player, especially at this position too, that was Akaika Malloy saying that Braylon Trice was going to be the next Joe Tryon. And I love Joe Tryon. Joe Tryon is one of my favorite players to watch on this Husky defense. I think that Braylon Trice has been better than Joe Tryon in his Husky career. You can debate me in the comments if you want. That's fine. But I think that that's a fair statement to make. So I just think that that's really, really interesting, something that we need to talk about.
Yeah, and he followed the similar path to Joe Tryon, where very underrated, wasn't totally recruited coming out of Joe Tryon came out of Renton, Jacob Lane came out of Emerald Ridge. And so neither of them were necessarily hot commodities. They weren't JTT, they weren't, all these. But again, the staff has shown we don't need, and I know fans are going to get mad, we don't need a JTT if we can develop somebody into being an elite pass rusher. We don't need to go get Braden Platt, right? The guy.
Right. I'm going to be your verbal asterisk really fast. I'm going to be your verbal asterisk, and then you can continue making your point. We're not saying that they're not trying to recruit those guys. That's it. We're not. That's not all we're saying. Please continue.
Right. Exactly. And but when you can find guys that are local and you can develop, I mean, Denzel Boston's a perfect example where you probably could have got a 3 or 4 star out of California, but instead you take the chance on the fact that Jamarcus Shepard took him without seeing him in a game, which is incredible testament to Jamarcus Shepard. But I think it's also a fact that, hey, we can develop these guys as long as they have the right size. And 6'5", 250, Jacob Lane's is the perfect size to add more weight to his frame, a couple more years in the program. And he's kind of going to follow that similar track. I remember William Inge offhand saying fast lane when Jacob Lane was walking past him at the spring game. And it's like, oh, fast lane. You already got a nickname for him. Okay. So I think it was always a guy that, hey, you know what? We got Zach Durfee. We got plenty of other guys. We don't need to rush him. But now he's at 4 games, I believe. It's 4.
Yes, this is 4.
He's at 4 because I showed you. Yeah. So he's at 4. Whether he gets to 5, probably in the bowl game or at some point. But again,
bowl game and all that, but we don't need to worry about that.
Exactly. But I think the fact that they played this year, and yes, he gets 1 snap against USC, but again, they could have put anybody. They could have put a lot of different guys in that position, and yet they chose to put him in there to get that significant rep. And again, you can't replicate in-game snaps. You can do it in practice all you want, but when the lights are on, especially at USC, he can say, hey, my first snap in the fourth quarter, by the way, the fourth quarter of the game, he's playing against USC when the game is still 10 points spread.
It was 10 points at the time. Yeah.
But still, I mean, that's significant. That's not something to sleep on, to our point, to your point, to our point, to everybody's point.
Absolutely. And because we're gonna flip and we're gonna talk a lot more about the offensive line, because feels like it might be as healthy as it's gonna get, because for all our YouTube viewers that see is Washington's offensive line at full strength, there is the caveat for what is available at this point in the year, as sad as that is to say, with all the injuries that we've seen at that position so far. But first, there are two games left, Husky fans, to get to Husky Stadium. There's Utah this weekend, then there's the Apple Cup coming up in a couple of weeks, and you shouldn't be stressed when you're trying to buy those tickets. And you just need to go to Game Time, because they just have all the best deals. They are obsessed with finding you ways to save money on tickets with Carol last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Some of the best places, some things about Game Time that are just the best: the last minute tickets, the flash deals, zone deals, and it's super easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, especially Husky games. So again, make sure you get those tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored tickets on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, more, everything else. And with things like zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats, and you get an average of 18% savings on those tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Whew. All right. The offensive line. Somebody asked a question today to either Ryan Grubb or Kalen DeBoer. talking about the offensive line, just saying like, yeah, do you feel like you're able to just kind of work in better cohesion now, especially for, we saw Dylan Johnson rush for over 250 yards against USC and just everything else that went on with just the running game. And Michael Penix was basically playing from a clean pocket for the majority of the night. Is this like just the best that we're going to see from this offensive line moving forward? Not in terms of that performance, but in terms of health and in terms of the chemistry. Is it there? Is it clicking? And is this what we're going to see more of going forward?
I mean, I think it is, although again, I don't want to handicap Utah by saying because you have to play who you have to play. But I think there's going to be a balance between what we saw against USC and what we're going to see against Utah this Saturday. Whereas I'm not saying Utah is the greatest defense in the world, right? USC or Oregon showed a lot against Washington. So I think the combination of those three games are going to be what you get. But to answer your question, I think, yeah, Garen Hatchett, it sounds like he's going to miss the game due to an ankle injury, but he could be back the rest of the season. He's kind of been a reserve guy coming off the bench. So I think I'm not underselling it, but I think, the starting line that they have, barring injury, I mean, Parker Brailsford, my word. I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but like I just looked up number 12 in the country among centers by PFF. The only other Pac-12 center graded higher than him is Jackson Powers Johnson, who tip of the cap, fantastic 3 or 4 year starter at Oregon. So you would expect that, right? Nobody expects Parker to be the top graded offensive lineman or player at his position. But from everything we've seen this season, I think, the tackles have been flawless. The interior has kind of been where the guards have been where they struggle, but you got Buelo back. Nate Kalepo's able to get a little more settled now, I think. And certainly with the teams you're facing, you should be able to have a good offensive line showing the rest of the season. I think that's kind of where I'm at with the line, where it could get a little bit better just based on play and production. But I don't think from a health perspective, it's going to change at all, barring a new injury.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I want to talk about this, right? Because Utah does have a really good defensive line. Jonah Ellis over there does a lot of really good things. I think he's super talented. And I just think that Washington's offensive line is finally just kind of after, and one of the other reasons that we wanted to make sure we touched on this was because we saw, especially against Arizona State and a little bit against Stanford at times, the struggles and the issues that could arise from this group. And now that those issues just seem to have stamped themselves out, right? A healthy Julius Buelow does a lot to help that out. And it's just kind of the depth that we've seen diminish at the position over the course of the year, where we've highlighted Parker Brailsford a lot because he deserves that. We've highlighted Troy Fautano and Roger Rosengarten a lot because they deserve that and because they did this exact same thing last year. They picked up right where they left off last season and have been just spectacular. And yeah, there have been some questions at guard at times, especially once Julius Buelow went down, but they managed to overcome that. They've managed to get to this point. And now it kind of feels like, barring, as you said, barring another injury, that this kind of feels like what we could see going forward for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think. So again, PFF fits the narrative when you want it to fit the narrative. This weekend's matchup will be the number 2 efficient offensive line in the Pac-12 versus the number 12 efficient offensive line in the Pac-12. I will let you do the math for who's who there, because Washington sure is telling dead last. So I think this is another opportunity where if the defense can pin their ears back and Braylon Trice can just eat again, and Zion got a couple of sacks against USC. So, he's going to be motivated for many reasons. And not that he wasn't motivated already, right? I mean, that's without question. But I think, closing out this season, I could in a way see Zion having a repeat of 2012 or 2020 in these last 4 or 5 games of the season.
I think that the one tough test that you're going to see with the offensive line before a potential Pac-12 championship game is Oregon State, because Oregon State has a really solid offensive line all around. That one I think might be a little bit tough. But you're right, Utah, they efficiency wise they haven't been great. Washington State, we'll see. They did lose to Stanford. I had to get that in 2 days in a row just for you, Lars. But. I'm just getting a death stare here.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, you're right. But, you're absolutely right. I honestly, I didn't watch that game. I saw the final score and I couldn't believe it. So, okay.
But that's getting back on track here. That is one of the things where the defensive line could show up again, and Washington's offensive line isn't necessarily going to see, Oregon State they have a really good defense too. So they're going to see some talented players, but they're not necessarily going to see the same all out kind of blitzes and the same all out pressures that we've seen in weeks prior, because these teams, Utah and Oregon State especially, don't feel that that's what they need to do to beat the Huskies, because they feel that they can rush 4, drop 7 and win that way.
Yeah. All we need is for USC to do the Lord's work this weekend, and anything can happen, right? Because I think if you're Washington, this is the perfect case to be in, right? Where you can start to play some younger guys in games, probably against Washington State, maybe even against Oregon, or even Utah this weekend, where you're able to get exact heading. Because if you're leading by 17 in the second half against Utah in the mid to late third quarter, I could start to see some of those younger offensive linemen, Tyber Rogers, some of the younger players, Jacob Blaine, start to get more reps and things like that, just to get those banked reps in there, because Zach's only played 2 games, so he's got some more to burn. Landon's already burned his, as we said. So it's certainly the road is still there for Washington. But yeah, this is, man, I mean, Penix, it's crazy to think about the offensive line that he had at Indiana that just sunk his entire career in Bloomington. And then he comes all the way out to the West Coast with a junior college tight end, a couple, 4-star left tackle, right tackle, Roger Rosengard, a couple of 4-star guards along the way, but nobody had really proven themselves. And you had Henry Abanavalu, who had a cup of coffee after the draft in the NFL, but didn't really do much because of all the injuries. And yet they still held up. And this season, I think the line's been better. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but I think the fact that the match made in heaven is Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb. I mean, the scheme and the development that Scott Huff does and the type of lineman that he brings, I mean, just absolute home run, which not surprising. But for everybody that crucified Scott Huff, you better send him a turkey and a thank you card at Thanksgiving, because, man, that dude did not deserve the bullets he took that in 21. Flat out. I said that I said it then, I said it last year, and I'm going to repeat that, because everybody questioned why he brings Scott Huff back to the worst offensive line in the country. Again, anybody would suck that year with John Donovan at the head of the offense.
I feel like that was a great Lars final thought. That might have been our best one yet. That was great. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and making this your first watch or first listen of the day. And if you're new here, hey, welcome. Love to have you here. We really appreciate it. Please make sure you like the video, leave us a 5-star review if you're an audio only. And if again, if this is your first time discovering us, there's so many easy ways for you to get involved in the show. Leave a comment down below and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We are there. We are everywhere. Please feel free to subscribe. Drop us that 5-star review. Leave a like on the video. Leave us a comment. We'll try to get back to as many views as possibly can. And also, feel free to follow us on Twitter, where we're going to share more content updates. We share a lot of our written articles as well as these podcasts there too. So feel free to drop us a follow there. And until then, we will talk to you on Wednesday.